All right, hey there, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith with an update on what's happening with RAFAEL, a system that hit Cuba as a Category 3 storm, major hurricane, and it's crossed Cuba for the most part. It's emerging out into the Gulf, and we think that it'll have an opportunity to at least maintain its intensity crossing the Gulf of Mexico. The lower Gulf still, we have warm water temperatures. It's a favorable environment in the short term, but late in the week, it's going to run into dry air, shear, and cooler sea surface temperatures, and that will likely limit the system quite a bit. So there's a lot to look at here with RAFAEL, an unusual system being a late season tropical system, hurricane. And so here it is in November, we're getting something going. And normally the environment's pretty favorable for strengthening in the Caribbean in November, but not so much in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm going to get my little keyboard over here so I can advance the graphics for you. And the first thing we want to do is pan this a little bit so we can get a little better view of what's happening with the system. Kind of a subtle pan here, but you can see as we get over the top of it, it is emerging into the Gulf. It's crossing away from the north coast to the northwest coast of Cuba, kind of west of Havana, and moving out over the Gulf. And so what's going to happen with it in time? Right now it's 105 mile per hour winds with the maximum sustained winds. It's a Category 2, pressure 966. It's moving northwest at 13, and the location as of the top of the hour here at 55 miles west northwest of Havana. So that puts it out over the Gulf. And the track, it's kind of a small, compact system anyway. It's not a real large, sprawling hurricane, and that means it's going to be a little bit more vulnerable too as it passes to the west. Now, there's a lot going on this graphic here, so what I'll do is I'll bring it up full screen so you can see it a little bit better. And what we have going on is a high pressure ridge which is located to the north and will be to kind of the north and the northeast of the system, and that's going to build down on the top of Florida. That's going to force this system further to the west, and the forecast is pretty certain that we're going to get a little bit more of a westerly push. And what this means is it's less likely to have a direct impact on our area. We may not see a lot of rain out of it or significant surf. We will have rough surf at the beaches and a high risk of rip currents, but a lot of that is just because of the southeast and the easterly flow pattern that we continue to see. And so that plus the tropical system will keep our rip current risk really high through the weekend. But we've had a high risk of rip currents at the beaches for like 2 weeks. And this is not the swimming season, it's not the tourist season, so that is a positive thing there. The forecast track looks a little weird when you get down towards the extended range. It kind of looks more like a circle than a cone, and that's because it gets into a more uncertain steering environment, and there are a lot of competing factors here. The low-level flow may try and carry it down to Mexico. The upper-level flow might take it, if it's deep enough, back up into Louisiana, but the models are hinting at a shallow system, and those are difficult to track. What I mean by a shallow system, not real tall cloud tops. It's going to be weakening. It'll run into some of that shear, and so as it does that, it'll kind of be like a listless ship out there, and it may not have as much to pick it up. And it's always interesting when one flow pattern wants to send something in one direction at the lower levels, and the mid and upper levels it tries to send it in another direction. And the bottom line is that rips the system apart. It's not a favorable environment. All right, the GFS model, which has probably been the best thing we've had of all the models this hurricane season, is following a track. You know, the European model had this kind of a track earlier in the week, and everybody was throwing it out the window, but it's kind of following what the European was saying. And we have it by Friday, late in the week, they're just south of Louisiana. And with this kind of a deal, you know, we've got some frontal factors in play that would be bringing us some showers, but we would not be seeing rain bands with RAFAEL based on this. Now, what the GFS does, it actually pulls it kind of up towards Louisiana, but it rips it apart. So it brings, you can see the swirl is off Louisiana, but it may bring some of the moisture our way. So that's what's showing up on the GFS solution. And it has completely decoupled the rain from the core of the system, and it's beginning to wash out completely by Monday. That's what the GFS is suggesting. Here's some of the other models. Look how crazy this looks. I mean, some models take it to the south towards Mexico, others kind of bring it up towards Louisiana, others meander it, some take it straight west, and the bottom line is we'll just have to see what happens, but it looks like more of a hostile environment. I guess the worst case scenario would be that it took the southerly track towards Mexico and was able to maintain its strength, and then kind of ended up somewhere later on. But right now it looks like if it moves to the north or towards the west, either way it's going to run into shear and dry air, and that will limit it. Look at the brown on the water vapor loop. This is on the western flank of the system. This will be inhibiting the system some, especially the further west it goes, because water temperatures, it's got a lot to overcome. In the short term, water temperatures are pretty warm. The colors are dark red right off of the northern coast of Cuba. Once they start to turn more orange, that is cooler and cooler water, and we see that in the western Gulf too. There are some pockets of warm water, but it's not nearly as robust as what it saw as it crossed Cuba. Also, upper level winds. So when we get into Saturday and Sunday, the GFS is placing this system off Louisiana, where you see that red and that orange. That's super hostile winds. A tropical system can't survive in that kind of scenario, especially with marginal sea surface temperatures. And the only solution that would get it in a more favorable environment is if it were to drop down towards Mexico and kind of get out of some of that wind shear. And there's also, you know, some really dry air that will get wedged in with that. What we're seeing locally right now with rain, we've seen this evening, we're going to continue to see, does not have anything to do with Rafael. We'll keep watching, but right now it looks like a really low impact event for our area, and we'll certainly let you know if there are any changes, but I kind of want to give you a little more in-depth view of what's happening with the system. And in our extended forecast, our rain chances are around 30% Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Those will go up or down based on how close Rafael gets. If it kind of takes that more southerly track, we may take a lot of the rain out of the picture. If it does get sheared off and portion of the system ends up into Louisiana in our area, we see those rain chances going up a little on Saturday and Sunday, but it's a wait and see on those weekend rain chances. And that's what we have for you here on Next Weather Today, the evening edition, and we're going to keep going with updates at noon and 6 as long as Rafael's kind of hanging out there around the Gulf, at least through the end of the week. So you can see us again this time tomorrow evening.